All right, so today you're going to hear from myself. I'm the Senior Watershed Restoration Manager at JRA, and then Anne Marie Roberts, who's our Middle James Restoration Manager. All right, and then most of you may have heard of us or maybe not. Let me see if I can make sure these slides go to the next one. Oh, what am I doing? Be patient with me as I don't know what I'm doing. All right. So to start off, who we are a nonprofit. And that area in green is the area that we are most concerned with. That's the whole James River watershed. That's 10,000 square miles. And our goal is to protect the James and connect people to it. And we do that through 4 different approaches that you can see there at the bottom, through awareness, appreciation, action, which is where a lot of our riparian buffer work happens, as well as advocacy. We've got maybe, I think, almost 30 staff now. Our main office is in Richmond. I don't know if you can see my little cursor, but our main office is in Richmond. And then we have a field office in Scottsville, which is where Anne Marie is located here. And then we have an office in Lynchburg and Williamsburg, somewhere down in here. All right. What is this next one? All right. Oh, that picture didn't show up. Well, shoot, imagine, let me see. Well, you can see it there. Well, now you can see it. So when we're saying buffers, that's what we're talking about. Let me see if it works. There we go. I don't know. So most of you probably know what buffers are when we say that, but it's these forested area along our creeks and our rivers. So all of this forest that you see there is what we're talking about restoring. And then to go over some of the benefits, this diagram has been used a long time. You've probably seen it around, but it helps really see why these vegetated areas along our streams are so important. So you can see some of the upland land use there. So buffers really help as water's coming down the slope. They help filter all of that runoff from whether it's farms, upland, or suburban neighborhoods or urban. Buffers have a use pretty much everywhere, not just agricultural landscapes, but across the watershed. They also stabilize our banks. You can see there, if those trees weren't there, that land would be eroding, which we don't love that because that ends up being sediment in our waters that kind of fill all those little crevices where the rocks are, and kind of destroy habitat there for the little critters that like to hang out down there. As well as shading and cooling our streams, particularly on those smaller streams. Brook trout and other species really like cool water, and if there's no shade, then those temperatures fluctuate more drastically and are just too warm for them to really survive. So we love the canopy there. Of course, providing habitat through these riparian corridors is important, as well as just supplying food for wildlife along those corridors. And something a lot of people don't think about, and if you're interested in learning more about this, Stroud Water Research Center has some really cool stuff about the importance of leaf litter in our streams. All those little macroinvertebrates are also cleaning the water as it's heading through these waterways. And they are dependent on that native leaf litter from our trees. So as you can see, there's tons of reasons why we're interested in riparian buffers. And then I just wanted to give you a little hopefully all this works right, little idea of where we are in buffers right now and why we're so focused on getting these in the ground. We put out a State of the James report every other year. And this one was just released in October. I wanted to go through a few of these indicators, and bear with me, it can be kind of complicated to explain, but if you have questions, please type them along the side and we'll get to them. So we have a riparian forest indicator right here. Looks like we're doing really great. It says 84%. This Chesapeake Conservancy does analysis of land cover data, and they've shown that 84% of our riparian areas in the watershed are forested. And that shows the dark green in that image is areas where there's more forest, and those areas that are lighter are where there's less. So take that into your head. So 84% of our buffers are forested. Again, that sounds great. But the Virginia Cleanup Plan, particularly the James River TMDL, calls for specifically for forested buffers. This is where, just bear with me. So specific to forest buffers, because there's also grass buffers. This is talking about what we still have left to put in. The original goal is just over 27,000, and we've only put in just over 1,700. So again, the goal is over 27,000 for forest buffers, more acres, 27,000 plus acres for forested buffers. And at this point, we've only put in about 1,700. So we have a long way to go. Now I want to show you where some of these other things land, because those goals show up in our ag pollution controls. This is specifically around the TMDL for the James around agricultural BMPs. And within those numbers, grass and forest buffers show up. So the total buffers that were grass and forest combined is about 70,000 acres. And you can see that listed right here. And to date, we've only put in just under 8,000. Again, we have a long way to go, and that's grass and forest. Breaking that out, what does that mean? So under the ag pollution, the ag BMPs, that's again forest buffers, which they're calling for just over 24,000. And that includes forest with fencing, cattle exclusion fencing, or just forest buffers, as well as grass buffers, which is about, they're calling for just over 40,000 in grass buffers on ag land. And that could be simply a grass buffer or cattle exclusion fencing with no trees. That also counts as those grass buffers. And then it also shows up, I don't think we call it out on here, but the stormwater pollution controls, that's where we kind of capture the non-agricultural TMDL goals. And just so you kind of, again, we have a long ways to go on that too. But in the non-ag buffers, it's calls for just over 2,800 forest buffers. So it's recognizing there isn't a ton of space left in our urban areas, but there's still some there. And so, and there I can tell you some updates on those numbers. So the non-ag buffer, we've put in just over 19 acres, and they're calling for over 2,800. So to recap, under ag, forest buffers was just over 24,000. We've put in 1,700 plus. Again, long ways to go. Grass buffers, it was just over 40,000, and we've put in just over 5,700. So hopefully that kind of helps give you an idea of like, we've got a long ways to go. And let's get back in here. All right, let's see if I can go to the next. Okay, so that's where we're at in the James. So a couple years ago, JRA got a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant to work with several soil and water conservation districts in the James River watershed. And those partners included Thomas Jefferson Soil and Water, Monacan Soil and Water, Natural Bridge, as well as Robert E. Lee Soil and Water Conservation District. And that grant really was looking at getting fencing in and buffers in. That's Luke. I just love this photo. I have to use it as much as possible. So these are two projects that we installed through that grant. And it was really the beginning of a really strong partnership. So this was a site in Albemarle County where the cows were hanging out in that stream pretty much every day. You can see it's not in great condition. And unfortunately, I stepped in that gross water after I told him not to. His boots later retired. But so that was the before picture. And then the one to the right is after our project. So you can see the stream exclusion fencing went in because we don't want the cattle in the stream. And then you can see those little tree tubes. Those are where baby trees were planted along the creek as well. So that was one project. And the one below that was another project we did with Luke at Thomas Jefferson Soil and Water in Albemarle County. You can see there on the left what it looked like when we first went out for a site visit. The cattle were grazing all of that, and there was no fencing that kept them out of there. The banks were eroding pretty terribly. You don't really see many trees, maybe a few cedars in the back there. And then that picture on the right shows you what it looked like. I think, when was that picture taken? It looks kind of wintry. I think that was taken at the last fall. So those are we planted it in spring of 2018, and that was taken in the fall that year. So you can see things have already started growing back, and it looks a lot better today. Even those trees have all popped out of those tree shelters. So really just the point there is that we ventured into this buffer world not knowing really who was doing what at the time. We kind of knew the districts were doing some stuff, Department of Forestry, but through this partnership, we realized the districts are the ones who are putting the fencing in the ground, and they're the experts. So we're letting them kind of do their thing, but the niche that wasn't really being filled across the James is buffers and people getting forested buffers. Most of the fencing, if not all of it in some districts, when they put it in, they're just focused on getting those cattle out. That's their main goal. And so they're usually not planting trees along with that. So a lot of fencing has gone in, but it's just grass buffers. So we're really interested in taking it to the next level of impact and planting trees. So we started the James River Buffer Program to try to fill that niche. And the niche is, we found, you may have heard of other buffer programs like CREP is probably the most popular. That's not eligible for every landowner. And then also it's not desirable by every landowner. Not everybody wants to do that. It's important to have choices for people. So we started this pilot buffer program, and we started in the Middle James. And so again, Anne Marie, who's going to be talking in a minute, is focused right here in Scottsville. And we cover this area here pretty much. And then we also are partnered with Department of Forestry, who is also implementing this program. And they've got more people, as you can imagine. They've got more foresters. So they're willing and able to take on a little larger of a geography. But to the public, this is the area that you're eligible, this Middle James region. And our goal is hefty. It's not, the thousands and thousands of acres, but we have to start somewhere and start with what we can do. And that's 240 couple acres over the next 3 years. And the Department of Forestry is looking at a larger goal of 700 acres of new forest buffer in the Middle James region. And this is thanks to the Virginia Environmental Endowment. They have a James River Water Quality Improvement Program that they started, I think, last year. And we were one of the first awardees of that grant. Let's see. All right, do you want to start there? Do you want me to go for it? All right, I'm going to pass it over to Anne Marie, who's going to kind of go through the basics of the program, who the partners are, and how people can get involved.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anne Marie Roberts. I'm the Middle James Restoration Manager, so I'm out of the Scottsville office. And I'm coordinating the James River Buffer Program along with Amber. And it, like she mentioned, is one program. We have the two lead partners, the Virginia Department of Forestry and then JRA. The landowners are all in the Middle James watershed. We have two different installation approaches, but basically everything else is the same. And then we have our program partnerships with our soil and water conservation districts, Peter Francisco, Thomas Jefferson District, and Monacan District, as well as the Virginia Outdoors Foundation.
And just to add on to that, just to stress the importance of partnerships, we couldn't do this stuff without them. And just if you're wondering why, I already spoke to the districts. The partnership there is really, they have the end with a lot of our agricultural landowners and where fencing has happened. And so we're working closely with them on identifying where fencing has already gone in, where we can come back and add trees, and vice versa. And then Virginia Outdoor Foundation, they're focused on easements. And we are partnering with them to reach out to those easement holders and see if they're interested in planting buffers, because you may think they have a conservation easement, that means they have a riparian buffer already. In a lot of cases, that's not the case. That's not required of the easement.
Right. So we're starting with those projects like the exclusion fencing and the easements, and then we're enhancing those projects by restoring the hardwood buffers. So as Amber mentioned, you all saw the map. The eligible area for the landowners is in the Middle James, and they would just need a desire to restore a streamside buffer. It could be on a creek, a stream, a river, a pond, and also maybe a desire to improve the habitat, but that's not a requirement or prerequisite, but a lot of times that we can improve the wildlife habitat along with the streamside forest. They have to have an area that's at least 35 feet along the stream. We can plant a wider buffer, but the 35-foot is our minimum requirement. And some of the elements of the James River Buffer Program and what it funds is first the design. So the landowner will reach out to us and apply on our website, which we'll show you later. And we'll do a site visit, work with the landowner on a buffer plan. And also the program funds the site prep. So that could be anything from mowing to, we used a forestry mulcher the other day to remove a bunch of Chinese privet, herbicide application for invasives. And then also it funds the labor and materials for installing the riparian buffers through the different methods. And the two different methods are the traditional tubes that you put in the around the tree seedlings, and the other method that the Virginia Department of Forestry is using is through natural regeneration and managing invasive species. And then this is a really great aspect of the program is that we also help with the project establishment and maintenance for 3 years. A lot of these projects will get left, they'll get planted and left and not maintained, and it's crucial for them to be nurtured into at least 3 years after they're planted. Do you want me? And also another aspect is this is not a cost share program, so we pay upfront 100% of the cost for all of these elements here.
I don't know if we have that another one, and it requires a 15-year agreement from the landowner. So we cover 100%. They've signed a 15-year agreement that they're not going to intentionally destroy it, get rid of it. It's important to note if that were to happen, we have wording in the agreement that it would be a prorated amount back to us for the amount of years that it wasn't a viable buffer anymore.
Yeah, and we encourage into perpetuity, of course, but the 15 years is the minimum that we require for this program.
Yeah.
Delving a little bit more into the details as far as the buffer design, we'll do the site visit and determine conditions on the site, such as soils and aspect and existing trees that may be growing scattered along the edge. And then we work with the landowner. We recommend species, but also take requests from the landowner and try to put in species that are going to do well for the site. We determine spacing depending on the site, and then the scope of the project will determine if we use a contractor to install it or if we install it through volunteers. We have 2 planting seasons. We can plant in the spring, and we're also planting right now in the fall. So there's 2 options for landowners. And again, with our buffer plan, we're including the tubes and the stakes.
And you can see her list. Anne-Marie did this one. We like to use a variety of native tree species that would grow in riparian areas. We don't just go out and plant 2 types of trees.
Right.
We're really trying to create a habitat and an ecosystem. I think it's important to remember that when we're out here planting these areas, we're hoping that they're long-lasting and sustainable, and remembering when we're doing it that we are creating those wildlife habitat corridors, and we want to plant, a mix of species that are resilient and supporting all types of insects and critters and everything. So
yeah, and just to add on to that, the plant community plant communities. So not just the single species, but having the
Yeah.
diversity in our plant communities. Site prep, it's very important. A lot of sites, depending on the site, they'll have a lot of fescue, especially if it's marginal pasture land, or we'll have a lot of invasives such as Chinese privet. This was our site that was planted yesterday in Albemarle County. The whole stream corridor was filled with Chinese privet, a dying ash. So basically the whole site had to be prepped for the new plantings. So you can see the skid steer here with some sort of attachment on the front of it that mulches the tree down, mulches the privet down. The reason we took this path with this particular project is it would have been cost prohibitive to have the crew come out and treat it with like a basil bark or just a cut stump type method. So different, it just depends on the site, on what it needs. Some of them just need to be mowed and we're good to go. So installation, there's two methods, either through the contractor crews or volunteers. This is a volunteer project. And first step is we sculpt the ground, get the competing vegetation away from the tree. Then you plant the seedling. They're 1-year-old seedlings, so they're pretty tiny. Baby trees, and then we use the tree shelters, 2x tree shelters, which they allow for sunlight to come through. It's a little bit of a greenhouse, and then we will support it with a treated stake, and then put a bird net on it. I think in this, did you use mats?
Oh, yeah,
okay, yeah, wait.
Give it a minute.
Okay, this one takes a minute to.
Maybe it said, we used too nice of photos, I think, is what happened.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is, from current slide. If it doesn't show up, it's okay. It just shows basically, yeah, that's all right.
Okay.
Oh, there they are.
Yeah, and in this
Yeah.
particular situation, the site, they use mats. So sometimes we use mats, sometimes we don't. It's just the biggest thing is making sure that competing vegetation around the tube is just taken care of. And the tube has a perforated edge so that when the seedling or the tree is big enough, depending on the species, it'll just break that perforated edge when it's ready, and then you just remove the tube. Deer pressure is the main reason we install with these tree shelters. And then getting into project establishment and maintenance, that 3-year agreement through the program. These are when you do the survival checks. You go out, make sure the trees are okay, check for any broken stakes, replace seedlings, just take inventory of the whole project. What's working, what species are maybe do not need to be replaced, and then doing some either mowing or spot treatment around the tube. Yes, and happy growing streamside forest is what we are looking for. This makes us happy when we see the trees growing out of the tubes or breaking the tubes. It's really a nice moment.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to pull up the website right now and go over that a little bit of how you apply.
Anne-Marie.
Yes.
Hi, so this is Ann. I've got a couple quick questions for you. So you said that deer browse is a big and important problem, and the picture you just showed of when the trees have gotten out of the tubes, which is wonderful. But that oak tree right there that is just a little bit above the tube on the left, I'm thinking that's like favorite deer food. So, I mean, what do you, I mean, is there anything that you can do? Is there anything that you're able to do to protect those lower limbs, or do you just, or do you feel like it's just far enough along that that's not something that we need to worry about?
I think you hit it right there. It's far enough along that you don't have to worry about the pressure on the tree. It depends on the site. If you don't have a lot of deer pressure, you like say the landowner hunts deer, you can use a 4-foot. But if you have a lot of deer pressure, say in maybe an urban area where they're not hunted, or there's a wildlife sanctuary, you might want to go to a 5-foot tube. But the 4-foot is pretty much the threshold for browsing animals.
So thank you. So we got another question. It says, will you talk a little bit more about the role of the Virginia Outdoor Foundation
Yeah.
in that partnership?
Yep, for sure. When we started pulling this grant together, I'm trying to remember how we even got all these partnerships. The relationships take years, and then you're like, when did we talk? When we were pulling it together and trying to analyze kind of where we wanted to do work, actually, you know what? I said I wasn't going to make it difficult, but I'm going to show y'all something really quick on here. Because I think this might have, let me see if it has the easements.
It does.
Doesn't it have easements? Yeah. Yep, it does. So, all right. So Virginia Environmental Endowment, and I'm going to get back, I'm not going to ignore the VOF question, just it leads me to the VOF answer, is Virginia Environmental Endowment worked with Chesapeake Conservancy to create this restoration planner for the James River watershed. And I'll zoom out in a minute. I don't want to get it digitalized. I'm sorry if it's digitally funky. But you can see all of these colors. What the heck is going on, right? What in the world are these colors? They've ranked parcels basically tier 1 through 5. Let me turn that off real quick. They've ranked them tier 1 through 5, and then these green that you see are where there's conservation lands. That's where easements are, which is pretty cool. And so you can see where there's overlap. So what we wanted to do with Virginia Outdoor Foundation, and what we are doing, is we have filtered this down and figured out, all right, where are those tier 1 properties that could make the, basically tier 1 means if you do a project there, you're going to have the biggest impact on water quality. So we looked at where do those exist and where do they exist where there's an easement. Because then it's even more awesome, right? You get a buffer in and you know it's protected, which is what we want. So this one, those green boundaries are where those easement lands are. And just to show you a little bit about this tool, these crazy things are, the light orange is showing you where there's opportunity for 35-foot buffers. And the orange is showing you where there's opportunity for 100-foot buffers. So this is a stream here. And they basically figure that out based on really detailed imagery. And they could highlight and find out where they're lacking. So our partnership with VOF is, again, filtering that out. And what we did this summer was Virginia Outdoor Foundation sent out a postcard about our program from them, letting those landowners know that this program is eligible for them and encouraging them to sign up. And then once those projects are in the ground, we do have funding for an easement amendment to make sure, again, that that buffer's included in that write-up around their easement, and that the easement, the VOF staff then know to check on it when they go back out there throughout the life of the easement. Does that help with that? Does that answer that question, Anne?
It did for me, and if this individual has a follow-on, then he or she can type it in the screen, and I'll let you know. Can you talk a little bit before you go any further about what the Virginia Department of Forestry, are they providing the seedlings, or are they doing something else in addition to that?
Yeah, sure. They are a partner with the James River Buffer Program, so they actually do take applications that come through that are in their geographical region, or say a landowner that's interested in installing a buffer through natural regeneration. So they are working in the field as well with landowners and doing site visits, and then restoring buffers. So yeah, we do get some seedlings from their forestry centers, but they are actually on the ground with us in implementing this program.
Yeah, we're kind of equal. We're both doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But attempting to do it together, which is a fun challenge, and we both bring different strengths to the table. So we host, these are just details, but we host the website, which we'll show you in a minute. And so just miscellaneous applications that come through, we take those in, and then Anne Marie and our point person with Department of Forestry review those on a weekly basis. They have a phone call every week, every Monday, and go through the list and kind of divvy up, you know, this one looks like it would be great for you all to take on, this one looks like it'd be good for us. And again, it's usually based on some of it's based on geographic area. And then the main big dividing thing that we kind of determine is if the site, do we think it would be suitable for natural regeneration, which is where Department of Forestry is really looking to do that. And so that's kind of how we're doing it at the moment. But this is the pilot year. So we're kind of working with them and reassessing every quarter to see what things we need to change or adapt to be even better and make sure that we're really filling the need for the landowners and filling a niche out there with forest buffers.
Thank you. So we do have another question. So Claire Newbert's down in Hampton. She wanted to know if do municipalities get TMDL credit for these projects?
Oh, I don't know if the municipalities do or not. That I would have to check on that. I know we're reporting them. So when we put them in the ground, we'll report them through the DEQ BMP clearinghouse, and we'll be tracking through that. Same with Department of Forestry.
So that would mean, Claire, to answer that question a little bit more, so that would mean that the state gets its nutrient reductions associated with the buffers,
yeah.
but the local government does not.
Yeah.
And then George Curran is also is down in Hampton, and he asked, what can people in the Lower James do to help?
Yes. So interestingly, we work in the Lower James. We have an office down there. We just got another grant from Virginia Environmental Endowment to start doing living shorelines down in the Lower James. That just starts this year. We're going to be first starting our partnership, and that is Elizabeth River Project, who I'm sure you're familiar with, and they're doing awesome things down there with living shorelines. They're really the leaders right now in the James getting those in the ground. But they're very focused on their little neck of the woods way down lower. So our grant is going to be one of our staff is going to be trained, kind of working a few days in the week with their staff that work on living shorelines, learning how to do the design and permitting, and then we'll be bringing that opportunity upriver into other areas that the Elizabeth River doesn't cover. And so we'll be offering, that'll be more of a cost share program to get living shorelines on the ground. But there is a chunk of money in there for buffers as well. So if we're going to a site that wants a living shoreline and we see that it's prime candidate for buffers, we'd be installing those as well. So that opportunity will be coming soon. And who knows, again, this is the pilot year of this program in the Middle James, and it'd be interesting to get feedback from folks in the Lower James and Hampton and other places to see if the same type of program down there is needed. We created this in the middle because we knew there was a niche. We've been working there and we were like, nobody's doing this. This is needed. So it'd be interesting to know that for us.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. And I guess looking into what opportunities there are for landowners down there around buffers, I'm not totally sure, but I would assume we're kind of cataloging, going alongside of this, we have a riparian partnership group that we've started, and part of that is just figuring out all the programs that are out there for people to take part in that can help them get buffers on the ground. I would say for now, people in the lower should contact their local soil and water conservation district to get started. They have a few programs. I think the acronyms FR1, FR3 are two options through the Virginia Ag Cost Share Program. What else? And CREP, of course, would be eligible down there. Those are the main three that I know, but I would say the Soil and Water District would be a great place to get started. Any other questions before we?
Nope.
All righty. Yeah, we'll show you the buffer website. It's hidden behind there. Can you close that one? Close this first one and then it'll come.
First one, yeah, I don't want to close the webinar.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so this is the James River Buffer Program website, jamesriverbuffers.org. And it's pretty easy to navigate. You start with the eligibility map. If you're eligible for the program in Middle James, see if you qualify. and tells you a little bit about buffers. And we have our blogs. So we just had a field day where we were highlighting riparian buffers, and we also have different articles. And so to apply, you would go under the apply section, and let's see if it'll. Yeah. And so there's 2 steps. You can either download a printable form or apply online. And when you apply online, it actually goes straight to our what is the mapping, a buffer tool that so we can keep track of our projects. And so it's pretty straightforward. And the only thing is it won't go to the map until you've filled out everything before it. So that is really how you apply for it. And then at that point, we get the applications in, and then the Department of Forestry and us, we just work through the applications and see who should take the project, who would be the best project lead. Let's see, and we also have.
You can pull up the map on one page. Go back to the.
Just go here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see if I can find it real quick. Let me see if I can. Yep, here you go. If you keep scrolling down, if you are a map person, you could type in your address wherever you want. This is one way to do it. Because it can be confusing. As you all know, like county boundaries don't follow watershed boundaries. So, you know, some counties, some people are eligible, but other people may not be. But yeah, you can type your address in, and that shows, this is one little house, that person would be in the eligible zone. But as you can see, some counties, like particularly down here, it's only partial. So important to really look at that and make sure that whoever it is that it's applying is actually in the James River watershed. What else is useful on here? Oh, just to pull out some volunteers. So maybe you're not a landowner, and so you can't put it on your property, but you still want to do something. We do have, as we mentioned, some of these are installed by volunteers. We actually have one upcoming this Saturday in Albemarle County from 9 to 2. So you can go on this volunteer page here, click there, sign up to plant trees with us. We'd love to have you. We might have another one coming up, but we haven't scheduled it at Wild Rock. We didn't quite finish that up last weekend. So in the spring and fall, keep an eye out for opportunities to come out and plant trees. And then in addition, something to keep an eye out for is our Riparian Stewards program. We just hired someone, his name is Joey, and he's gonna be heading up this with us. This program we are looking to start, we're gonna be developing the details this winter and hopefully launching it either late winter or early spring of 2020. That says coming summer 2019, but we weren't ready. We wanted to make sure we had plenty of projects in the ground to get people out there. So the idea with this program is gonna be any of the projects we install with volunteers, which will usually be some of the smaller planting locations. We're hoping to get this program up and going that will assign trained volunteers to a site that they would be kind of responsible for those 3 years. They would go out, we're figuring out these details this winter, but at least once, hopefully more times a year, to go through, again, do the survival check, mark how many lived, how many didn't live, so that we have an understanding. They'd be spray painting the tubes where they didn't make it so that we could come back and replant, fixing any of those stakes that maybe fell over. They would be doing that. If there's vines growing up through the tubes, they'd clip those. And then reporting back to us what needs to be done so that we can make sure that we get that taken care of. So our goal, I think we're going to probably get above this goal. I think it was to train 15 core riparian stewards to help us in the Middle James over the next 2 years. But as we've seen with a lot of our volunteer plantings, we have repeat volunteers who love to get out there. And I have a feeling that once they plant the tree, they're going to want to go back and see how those baby trees are doing. So we're really excited about this program. It gets people involved. It gets them outside. And again, the most important thing is stewarding these forests so that they become healthy and happy. So keep an eye out for that program. Anything else we need to point out on here about
that's, there are some resources on here if you need them. Just some various documents and websites for more information, if you're interested. Yeah. And
Yeah, contact.
Yeah.
That was our last slide, I think, was our contact information.
Yep. And that just so you know where that goes, it goes to Anne Marie.
Yeah.
That buffers at the James River. It was important, as we mentioned, the partnership with Department of Forestry. We really wanted this to be, when we were forming this program, simple. We heard over and over again from people, keep this program simple. And so that's what we're trying to do. Not giving people, if you live here, contact this person. If you think about this, contact this person. Just one phone number, one email, and we'll handle figuring out where you need to go and all of that, so you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, and as part of our site visits with the program, we get you in touch with the correct person. So say you're not really a good fit for the James River Buffer program, maybe you're a better fit for CREP. We'll, help the landowner get to the right program and the right person.
Yeah, and to build off what she just said, I can't stress this enough. When we created this program, we were very conscious of trying not to create something that was competitive with CREP. We didn't want people to choose this necessarily over that program. It was really created as an alternative and to fill that niche for those people who CREP isn't. Maybe they're not eligible. So really, if we go out there and they're eligible for one of those state-funded or federally funded programs, we're going to try to encourage them to go that route so that we can make sure we're getting everybody else, all the other folks.
All the others.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much, ladies. We've answered all the questions that have come online. So if there are any others, you can type them real quick and I'll relay them. To me, this has been really helpful.
I'm glad. Yeah. We're having fun. It's exciting to not just talk about it, but really, get these trees in the ground is what we need. We need more people getting them in the ground.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've covered everything. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And for those of you on the phone, thanks for spending your lunch hour with us. We appreciate that as well. And I hope that this met your needs. And if you've got any follow-on questions, I think everybody's got my email address, and I'm happy to forward any questions that I don't know the answer to over to Anne Marie and to Amber. So thank you, ladies. I really appreciate it. And everybody have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Anne, for the opportunity. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.